news right now as police investigate the shooting death of a man and woman in Simi Valley. We're now learning the victims were married and both were in their 60s. Police say someone walked up to their open garage on Hawksbill Place and started shooting around noon today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Liz Nagy.
And I'm Jory Rand. The couple was found in their driveway suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. Investigators believe the shooter took off in a car and say this was a targeted attack, saying there is no danger to the public tonight. Some neighbors speculate the shooter may have been related to one of the victims. Police have not confirmed that, but they also say a suicide in Chino today may be connected to this case.
America is entering a moment that can no longer be ignored, explained away, or pushed into the background. In just a matter of days, the nation has witnessed a disturbing pattern of violence that crosses age groups, communities, and regions. Children were shot in Stockton during what should have been a normal family celebration. National Guard members were attacked near the heart of Washington, D.C., raising questions about whether even the most secure environments are still safe. And now, a married couple in their 60s has been gunned down in broad daylight outside their own home in Simi Valley, California. 3 separate incidents. 3 different groups of victims. 3 different parts of the country. And yet the underlying message feels unmistakable. More and more Americans feel like the nation is slipping into a level of instability that cannot be brushed aside. This is not about isolated crimes. America has always had crime. This is about the timing, the frequency, and the breadth of who is being targeted. Children, military personnel, and older adults represent 3 of the groups society considers the most protected or the most vulnerable. When violence reaches each of them within days, it forces an uncomfortable question into the national conversation. What is happening to this country? Even people who avoid political debates or rarely follow news are beginning to sense a shift, a feeling that these incidents are not random, but indicators of a larger unraveling happening beneath the surface. The Simi Valley shooting especially shook people because it happened in broad daylight, in a quiet suburban neighborhood, to a couple in their 60s, reportedly targeted at close range. Communities are asking how violence this deliberate could happen with no warning, no previous threat, and no protection. And as law enforcement investigates whether a related suicide in Chino is connected, it becomes clear that even small, peaceful communities are no longer immune to the kind of violence many assumed only happened in major cities. When you set this beside the Stockton tragedy, where children were killed at a birthday celebration, the emotional impact becomes even heavier. People expect political violence. People expect gang violence. People even expect random crime. But they don't expect children and older families to be caught in targeted shootings within the same week. They don't expect military members, stationed near the Capitol, to become victims of a coordinated attack. And they certainly don't expect 3 very different tragedies to unfold so quickly, each revealing a separate failure inside the systems meant to keep the country stable. The sense of safety in America is collapsing from multiple directions at once. Schools feel vulnerable. Public gatherings feel vulnerable. Homes feel vulnerable. Even uniformed military personnel standing in one of the most monitored areas in the country were not safe. This is why so many people are beginning to use words like unsettling, broken, and meltdown. They're not reacting to the number of incidents. They're reacting to the meaning of these incidents, the symbolism of a country where violence seems to appear without warning and where the victims represent every corner of society. Political leaders, judges, analysts, and even ordinary citizens are recognizing that something deeper is happening. These incidents are not just tragedies. They are signals. Signals that social pressure, political tension, economic stress, and institutional weaknesses are all converging into a moment where violence spreads faster than solutions. And while investigations will continue and politicians will debate the causes, millions of Americans already feel the conclusion forming in their minds. The country is becoming unsafe in ways it hasn't been in decades. This is the environment America wakes up to now. A nation where fear is rising, trust is falling, and stability is starting to feel like a memory. And the most alarming part is that these incidents didn't happen over months. They happened within days. That kind of acceleration forces the question that no one can avoid anymore. Is this just the beginning? As these incidents unfold almost back to back, the political atmosphere in the United States is reacting exactly as you would expect: fast, divided, and increasingly unstable. Each shooting is now being absorbed into a much larger national argument about safety, leadership, and accountability. And at the center of that argument, whether he wants to be or not, is Donald Trump. Judges are making statements, lawmakers are positioning themselves, and analysts are reading between the lines. The shootings have triggered a response from the judicial system that goes far beyond basic commentary. When federal judges begin demanding answers from a former president during a week filled with violent incidents, it signals something unusual. The legal system is beginning to feel the weight of the same national tension the public is experiencing. The role of the courts is supposed to be neutral, steady, and insulated from political emotion. But even the judiciary cannot entirely ignore what is happening across the country. The combination of a military-targeted attack near the Capitol, a tragedy involving children, and now the killing of an older couple has pushed the nation into a state where every institution is being forced to reassess what is going wrong. For judges to speak up now suggests a deeper concern, one that goes beyond the legal filings and scheduled hearings. They are stepping forward because the stakes have changed. Violence is rising, distrust is growing, and a nation under this much pressure inevitably looks toward its courts for clarity, stability, and accountability. This sudden shift places Trump under a level of scrutiny that reflects not only his past actions, but the current instability in the country. Judges want to know what he knew, what decisions he made, what pressures he placed on institutions, and how his influence continues to shape public behavior and political polarization. Whether someone supports Trump or opposes him, the reality is that he remains an influential force in America's political landscape. And in a week where shootings are shaking public confidence in government protection, the courts are recognizing that they can no longer remain silent about the broader atmosphere surrounding these events. At the same time, political leaders on both sides are using this moment to frame their arguments. Some are claiming that the increasing violence reflects a breakdown linked to political failure or weak leadership. Others are warning that the justice system is moving into dangerous territory by appearing to target political figures at a time of national instability. This clash is creating a new kind of tension, not just between parties, but between institutions that are supposed to work together. The shootings have become emotional fuel for debates that were already heated, and the result is a political climate that feels more fragmented and reactive than ever. What makes this even more concerning is the public response. People are watching political leaders argue while communities mourn and families bury their loved ones. They are watching the legal system demand answers while still struggling to understand why violence is erupting in places that once felt secure. The disconnect between what Americans are experiencing and what their leaders are talking about is widening. This is why many people feel like the country is drifting into a period where every institution is failing at the same time. Crime feels uncontrolled. Politics feels unmanageable. The justice system feels unpredictable. And all of it is happening while violence spreads in patterns that no one seems prepared to address. This moment is not defined only by what happened in D.C., Stockton, Simi Valley, or Florida. It is defined by the system-wide reaction to those events: the political intensification, the legal escalation, the public fear, and the sense that the nation has lost its center of gravity. And as the pressure continues to build, the question becomes whether the institutions meant to stabilize the country are capable of absorbing this moment without breaking under it. As the nation tries to process the rapid chain of violent incidents, something deeper is beginning to surface, a silent acknowledgement that the systems Americans rely on for stability may not be functioning the way people assumed. Public trust, which was already fragile, is now being tested from every direction. Parents are wondering whether their children are safe in their own neighborhoods. Older adults are questioning whether the quiet streets they've lived on for decades are still safe to walk. Even members of the military, who are normally protected by layers of federal security, were forced to confront the reality that an attack can happen even in the shadow of the nation's capital. When multiple segments of society all begin feeling vulnerable at the same time, the emotional foundation of a country starts to shift. This shift is more than fear. It is disorientation. Americans are witnessing violence that touches every age group and every environment, and they're struggling to understand what connects these events. The truth is unsettling. There is no single explanation. Instead, these incidents reveal pressure building across several layers of society. Economic stress, political division, social fragmentation, mental health failures, and weakening community structures all create an environment where violence spreads more easily. When a nation faces several forms of strain at once, small cracks inside the system grow into large fractures. And those fractures become visible in moments like these. Sudden, unpredictable, deeply personal tragedies that leave communities stunned and institutions scrambling. Law enforcement agencies across the country are also feeling the weight. In many regions, police departments are understaffed, dealing with rising mental health-related calls, and stretched thin across growing populations. The shooting in Florida, where an officer was shot in the face during a routine service call, highlights a separate but equally alarming trend. Officers themselves are becoming frequent targets of unpredictable violence. This adds another layer of instability. When both civilians and law enforcement are being injured or killed within days of each other, the sense of control begins to erode. Police fear community backlash. Communities fear police failure. And leaders fear the perception that the system is slipping out of their hands. This expanding circle of vulnerability creates an atmosphere where institutions must confront challenges they did not prepare for. The judiciary, which traditionally observes from a distance, now feels compelled to address the rising tension. Political leaders, who often rely on predictable cycles of debate and messaging, are facing crises that no longer fit neatly into partisan narratives. Analysts are warning that the country is entering a phase where emotional volatility could influence public behavior in unpredictable ways. And ordinary Americans are left watching headlines pile up, each one adding a new layer to a growing sense that the country is becoming unstable in ways that feel unprecedented in recent memory. The shootings are not only tragedies, they are indicators of a societal climate that is becoming increasingly difficult to manage. When violence hits children, military personnel, older adults, and officers all within a short period, the message becomes unavoidable. The risks are no longer isolated to specific areas or specific groups. This broadening threat is what makes the moment so alarming. A nation can recover from individual tragedies, but when multiple tragedies happen almost simultaneously, and each exposes a different systemic weakness, the psychological impact becomes much deeper and much more lasting. America is now facing a moment where the question is no longer why a single incident happened, but why so many are happening so quickly, and what that means for the country's future. The fear spreading across communities is not irrational. It is the natural response to a pattern of events that suggests something foundational is shifting beneath the surface. And unless the underlying issues are confronted directly, the sense of instability will continue to grow. What America is confronting now is not just a crime problem or a political problem. It is a structural problem that reveals itself through every layer of society. These shootings, although different in location and motive, expose weaknesses that have been developing for years. A loss of community cohesion, a breakdown in mental health systems, a justice system struggling with credibility, and a political environment that cannot respond quickly or effectively to emerging threats. Each institution is operating under strain, and that strain becomes visible every time violence erupts in a place where it should never happen. This is why the sense of fear feels so different now. It's not rooted in a single event. It's rooted in the realization that the events are part of a much larger national pattern. When people watch children die at a birthday party, they feel that innocence is no longer protected. When National Guard members are shot near the nation's capital, they feel that security is no longer guaranteed. When an older couple is killed in their own driveway in Simi Valley, they feel that even the quietest suburban neighborhoods are no longer safe. And when officers responding to routine calls become victims of extreme violence, they fear that the front line that once protected society may be weakening. These emotions accumulate, forming a climate where people no longer assume stability. They question it. They no longer assume protection. They hope for it. This emotional shift is one of the clearest signs that a society is entering a period of deeper instability. In moments like this, the nation turns to its highest institutions for clarity and reassurance. But what we are seeing instead is a judiciary stepping forward not with calm guidance, but with sharp demands. Judges are no longer simply ruling on cases. They are raising concerns, requesting answers, and signaling frustration with the political climate surrounding these events. Their sudden visibility shows that even the courts, which usually remain detached from immediate crises, can feel the mounting pressure. And as they question decisions made by major political figures like Donald Trump, the legal atmosphere becomes another arena where national tension is rising rather than settling. This adds to the public perception that every part of the system is in a reactive state, unable to provide the stability people expect. What ties all of this together is a growing belief that the country is losing its ability to prevent crises before they escalate. The institutions that once acted as shock absorbers, schools, police departments, community networks, political leadership, the courts, are now being tested all at once, leaving little room for recovery or reflection. Each new tragedy accelerates the next, creating a national rhythm defined by fear, anger, and confusion. And because the incidents affect such different parts of society, there is no single solution that can address the entire problem at once. The fragmentation of these challenges mirrors the fragmentation of the country itself. This is why so many Americans feel overwhelmed. They are witnessing a kind of instability that is not isolated to one region, one community, or one political group. It is spreading across demographics, across institutions, and across everyday life. People are exhausted by the constant flow of violent headlines, unsure of what to expect next, and increasingly skeptical that any part of the system is strong enough to restore order. This emotional fatigue becomes part of the crisis. When fear becomes normal, when outrage becomes routine, when tragedy becomes expected, a society enters a phase where instability feeds on itself. The question now is not whether America can handle one more crisis. The question is whether the nation can regain control before these crises redefine what life in America looks like. The pattern is already visible. Children, military personnel, older citizens, and police officers all affected within days. These incidents are not random. They are warnings. Warnings about the direction of the country. Warnings about the fragility of its systems. And warnings about what happens when pressure builds for too long without meaningful action. And unless something changes soon, These warnings may be remembered not as isolated tragedies, but as the early signs of a much larger and more dangerous shift in the country's stability.